our Metropolitan Sets. These are our city sets. So we've got a lot of different neighborhoods within our city sets. And again, we're going to get out and explore here, this area. So if you want to leave any of your belongings on here, make sure they're on the ground. And again, fall. And also, you may see that this set is very fully dressed, so don't touch any of the props that you see on the other side of the street.
Right across the street here, it is fully dressed, as Brittany was just saying. All these taxi cabs here, that bench on the other side of the street with the trash can, all of the plants that are on that side of the street, the bicycle, none of that stuff is on this set, ever. Those things are put here for production that's about to be filming. We keep our sets totally bare, that way our art directors can come in and dress the sets however would be appropriate for whatever project they're working on. And Brownstone Street has been used in a variety of productions. They filmed a famous scene of Bruce Almighty there when he's carrying the dog out when he can't stop peeing inside the house. They filmed episodes of Seinfeld over here, supposed to look like New York. The outside of Mindy Kaling's apartment in the Mindy Project is right over there, the green building. They filmed scenes from Academy Award Best Picture winner The Sting and a whole lot of other movies as well. You know any voice fans? Watch The Voice, show The Voice. All right, we got one. Awesome. You'll really love this. When they're walking down this like bustling metropolitan street, and before they go to audition in the big building where they're auditioning, it's that building right there. And you can see the doors open. You can see it's just wood slats in there. It's not an actual building on the inside. They just cut to another building on the inside when they're filming the interiors. Now, all of these buildings are called facades, which means false front. Basically where we build the front and the sides of the building and nothing else. We build just enough for the camera to see, and then when you watch the TV show or movie later on, your imagination just naturally fills in the rest, because you know what a building looks like. You don't really question its validity if you can't see the entire thing. If you look across the street, you can actually see the sun is hitting some of these windows, and you can see just how fake it looks inside some of the buildings. You can see they look like big wooden empty boxes. They have these very crude stairs that I wouldn't really recommend anyone walking up or down. It's the bare minimum of what they need inside those buildings, just so the crew members can get up and down to the top of the building. There's the film up there. Go ahead and take a look over here at Brownstone Street. As Brittany said, don't touch any of the set decoration. You can touch the walls, you can touch the stairs, you can touch the buildings. Don't touch all the plants and the props that are around the buildings, please.
I think this is more about a boy.
Is it?
Yeah.
We think this is for About a Boy. Now everything on these sets, even the light posts that are there, can be taken out. This fire hydrant is not usually there. These light posts, these trees, all of these things are movable. That way the sets can be decorated any way we need them to be. Now a lot of these buildings that look like they're made out of brick or concrete are actually made out of recycled plastic and foam rubber. You can come up here and touch some of these and it doesn't feel like what it looks like. All of these sets are built inside of our Bud Westmore building, or rather, the faces of the sets are built inside the Bud Westmore building, which is our sign shop, where they make a lot of our signs that you'll see in one of our films, as well as all of the set walls. Well, the light post is the light post. But we can move it. Yeah, it is. Oh. Is it not a real light post?
No, it works.
Well, then what would you call it then? I don't know if it's a real light post. It's a light post that works. Alright guys, while we're walking over here, there's actually going to be some trams driving by. So as they're driving by, I'll probably stop talking because they're really noisy and I don't want to talk over them. But also, watch your step on the streets. If there's any trams coming, get out of the road. Hey guys, get out of the road. Train's coming.
Now, television and production work very differently.
Out of the road.
Shot reverse, all within a one week span of time. However, yes, films can take years and thousands of people to complete. So sometimes cast or work to go off a little bit of steam. Pretty much you guys are my favorite outfits from Back to the Future, and Michael J. Fox does not know there is real alcohol in alcohol products.
Alright guys, welcome to New York Street. We filmed a number of productions on New York Street. Anyone seen Captain America, the first Avenger? Yeah. The scene where he first gets his powers and he's jumping over all those taxi cabs, the camera was actually facing straight down this street. They had that big building made out of steel and glass that was in the shot, but it didn't fit the time period of the scene. So they just threw a huge green screen over that building, and then they digitally made it look like a construction site so that we didn't have the modern building. And the reason that we have some buildings that look more aged, some that look modern, buildings that look like they're made out of a wide variety of materials, that's so our filmmakers can get any type of metropolitan look they need without ever having to leave this few blocks of property. Michael Bay filmed scenes from the first Transformers on this street. Originally, he wanted to blow up some buildings in LA, and the mayor was like, no. So he was like, okay, can we rent out your sets? And we were like, sure. And he's like, can we blow up some of your sets? And we were like, no. So he's like, okay, so he built faces on the fronts of all of our buildings, and he blew those up. So he essentially built just a wall that looked like a building, put it over our buildings, blew those up, cleaned up the whole mess before they left. Really, anyone can rent these sets if you can afford it, and you can do whatever you want to the sets as long as they return to normal once you're done. So if you're renting the sets, we're not going to put restrictions on what you can and can't do on these sets. You can film anything. Stop talking. But the steel and glass building that they covered up for Captain America, that was used as the Oscorp building in The Amazing Spider-Man. And you might notice that the buildings are only about 50 feet high. In an actual metropolitan area, the buildings would probably be much taller than that. But these buildings come with digital counterparts. So if you film here, we'll give you digital information so that you can actually make the buildings look taller and taller and taller just by inserting them into the computer. That way we don't actually have to build these sets up very, very tall. And remember, the audience only sees what the camera sees. So if the camera is just filming you guys and not filming way up there, we don't need to see that it's a massive building. But if there are any wide shots where you see the whole buildings, then you can just digitally add top layers to that. Earlier we were talking about some forced perspective techniques. Remember forced perspective? They employ that on these metro sets as well. You might be able to notice that some of the windows, this building's a good example. On the first floor, the windows are taller. As it goes up each floor, they get a little bit shorter. And you can tell when you're looking at it in real life that the buildings are a little bit smaller as it goes up. But that's just forced perspective. And when you're looking at it through the camera, it just makes it look like the building is even taller because the buildings look further away. So there's a lot of tricks in the making of all of these sets. Now about 7 years ago, there was a fire that destroyed a lot of our metro sets, so they had to be rebuilt. And the project was called the Phoenix Project because from those ashes of the ruined sets came these beautiful new sets. But it was kind of a blessing in disguise because back then, about 7 years ago, was when the HD boom was starting to get big. High definition movies and Blu-rays and Blu-ray players and all that stuff. And our sets, they started looking a little aged. They were very old. And they were starting to not hold up very well on Blu-rays and in HD, filming with brand new cameras that really show every detail. Our sets weren't HD ready because they were so old and dated, and you usually didn't see that stuff in older movies or TV shows. So our sets were really starting to show their age. So it was terrible that some of our sets burned down, but it was actually a blessing in disguise because all of our metro sets now are HD ready. You can put them on camera, they look convincing, you don't question them. Some of our older sets, didn't really hold up as well when we were filming some more modern stuff. But now, all of these sets are ready to go. You can film anything you want on any of these sets. Does anyone have any questions about any of our metro sets? Does anyone know why we would film things here? instead of a soundstage. Obviously, we're not going to have as much control in a set like this, but we're not going to be able to film this wide variety of exterior buildings inside of a soundstage. Some of our sound stages get pretty big, but we can't build an entire town inside one of them, okay? But it makes a lot more sense for us to build these sets instead of actually going on location. Let's say we're trying to film a scene in New York. If we're actually trying to shut down traffic, we're rerouting traffic, we're dealing with the crowds, all the people that want to see whatever celebrity is going to be in the movie, the weather, the time of day, all of those things are going to play factors. And we still have to deal with some when we're filming on an actual set. We still got to deal with the weather, we still got to deal with the time of day, we still have to deal with those things. But we can manipulate it a little bit more. We can put up huge sheets to block rain if we need to. We can light the sets more effectively than we would in an actual city. And we don't have to deal with people. We don't have to deal with the noise of traffic. We have to deal with some of those elements, but infinitely fewer of them are affecting us when we're actually working in one of these sets. So that's why we can't film everything in a soundstage, but it also makes a lot more sense than actually filming on location, which can actually be quite a disaster in some cases.
You have to create traffic though.
Yeah, well with the trams, yeah, the trams can get pretty noisy, but if we're filming on these metro sets, if someone's filming here, we'll just reroute. So the trams will just bypass the streets entirely, or they'll go around. That way you don't really have to deal with any of that noise, because the trams, they definitely get a little noisy, but you don't have to deal with real vehicles driving down unless they're set here.
You don't have real vehicles to drive down during the filming?
Well, yeah, we could have like, we can get production vehicles if we need to, driving down there, but they're not gonna be honking, they're not gonna be, like they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And what we can also do for them to not interfere with the sound is we can record sound separately if we need to. We can record wild audio, which is the actors saying the lines, if it's too noisy of an environment to actually capture the lines without horns honking, things like that. And then they can literally just match up the audio with their mouths on screen. And that way you take out all the extraneous noise and just have the sound of the audio. And then you can later go in and put in extraneous noise. Usually when you hear horns honking, tires squealing, all those noises you hear in city street scenes, those were not actually captured when they were filming. All of those things were added by the sound department later on. Let's walk down this way towards our trolley. Before we get on the trolley, there's a couple more things I want to point out. Stand in the shade. Before you turn the corner, take a look down either side of this street. You can tell the buildings curve at either end of the street. That way it gives the illusion that the street continues on. If the street didn't curve, you would just see the end of our sets. But we want to make them look like a real city that goes on and on and on. That's why we have the buildings curve around there. That way your brain doesn't realize that you're not seeing the end of a street. It looks like it keeps going in those directions. Now if we're filming down this way, you would see the end of the street. In some cases, if they are filming down that way and they don't want to see the end of a street, they might throw up a giant green screen and digitally insert a street that continues going that way. If you look down this way, you're going to see this huge building, which is going to block all the visuals that would be behind it. It's not an actual building, obviously. This is just a mural painted to look like a building. And it's painted with a technique called trompe-l'oeil, which means to fool the eye. And basically, the further you get away from that wall, the more convincing it looks. It's painted with a lot of depth and shadows. You can see reflections painted in the windows. In fact, every few doorways, they actually have a real door cut out of the wall. That way background actors can just walk in and out of that wall, helping sell the illusion that it's an actual building. The reason that mural is here is for 3 reasons. Obviously, when the camera is facing the mural, it just sells that we're actually in a metropolitan area, because you're seeing a building as opposed to what would be behind it. In the case of filming, it would be production vehicles and things you don't want to see in a metropolitan area. The second reason that mural is here is even when the camera is facing away from it, it's going to be recording buildings that have windows, and those windows will reflect whatever's behind them. And just subconsciously seeing the reflection of a building just sells to us that we're in a real city. The third reason the mural is here is very simple. It blocks more sound that comes from that area. As we've been talking about, it's a very noisy process, filmmaking, and their recorders pick up all the sounds. So blocking some of the sound that comes from that area of the park is a good thing as well. Anyone have any questions? Metro Sets.
So, like, Why would they need to just paint it? Why not just make a real set like these ones and just have it fake?
Well, that way they can do anything they want with this wall.
Okay.
We don't really need more Metro sets because if we're just using this one street, we can use it for all kinds of different angles in an action scene. We can put the camera here and have the actors run by, and then we can put it catty corner and have the actors run by the other way, and then we can film down that street. So it's like we can kind of manipulate these sets to be as many sets as we need. Does that make sense? So we didn't necessarily need more, we just needed to not see behind that. And we don't necessarily have it painted like that all the time. Some productions can come here and throw a big green or blue screen over that wall and just digitally project whatever they need when they're fixing it in post-production. They could have made more sets, but also it doesn't really extend that far beyond the wall. We're gonna see behind the wall in just a moment. It's a hill that goes up there. There's enough room for some production vehicles. There's not really more room for a whole nother street of buildings. But that gives the illusion that there are more buildings back there, so it looks a lot bigger than it is.
Okay.
Everyone good? Cool, let's load back onto the trolley.